Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast. Coming up today, it's time of year for trade rumors, and we got them. How about some Mathieu Joseph talk? Trevor Zegras, huh? Daniel Alfredson is returning as a full-time assistant coach in the NHL. The Sens have officially finalized their coaching staff since the last time we got together. And a little Sens rewind as we look back at a crazy radio contest from the early 2000s. All still ahead here on the program. It is Steve Warren along with the coach, Greg Kennedy, who's in lovely downtown New York City. How are things, Greg?
No, not quite New York City, Steve. I'm on the island. I'm doing well, thank you. We're staying in a dorm at beautiful dorm rooms here, and the rink's just right around the corner, the Clark Gillies Arena, and we're 3-0. We're here playing Puerto Rico and Jamaica, and we beat Puerto Rico twice. We beat Jamaica once. We got one more game tomorrow, and then I'm heading home.
Nice. And once again, you are the men's head coach of Team Lebanon,
Yes.
which is made up primarily of what, Lebanese Canadians?
Correct. Everybody has at least one parent who is Lebanese,
Okay.
if not two, and they are predominantly Canadians, right, and Americans, right? This whole team here is Canadian American.
Cool. And it's give me a sense of the quality of hockey we're talking about.
This would be on par with well, not by age, but by skill level, a junior A team in Ottawa and in the CCHL.
Okay.
I've got guys here. I have a Gatineau Olympic here on my roster. Danny Akush plays for the Gatineau Olympique. So we have guys who played in the O, played in the Q or the Dub, and have graduated or currently are. I've got guys playing the NCAA, and guys playing minor pro here and there. So we would compete on the same level, top to bottom, with a junior A team, if not a lower level major junior A team.
That is excellent. So let's jump in today, though.
Mm-hmm.
We got lots to get to here on the program. And the one that grabbed me since the last time we got together, I shouldn't say that because the assistant coaching thing is probably bigger, but it's a few days old now. So we'll begin with this one. And this is from Bruce Garriock at Post Media. He said a league executive has told him that the club is trying to move winger Mathieu Joseph before the NHL draft. You said you called it just because I have fuzzy memories. I don't remember, but I'm going to take your word on it. So obviously you're not terribly surprised by the
Well, no, I've often said that he is one. Once you get past the choice of one of the two big two on the blue line, and you get past a Brandstrom, the next logical guy to move is Joseph, and he's been a guy all along that I've said, yeah, he's a guy that if they could move him, they could move him. They have enough pieces now that can do what he does. You've got enough guys in your roster now who can be a third line guy. Mathieu Joseph is not really a top six forward and probably never will be. And he's somebody you can, if you can get him out of here, you're freeing up almost $3 million a year in the cap space. It makes sense that he's a guy you're trying to move.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I look at him as a guy that is a really good third line player who can, if you need him, slide into the top six and he won't hurt you there because he is such a good two-way player. And I don't know that there's anybody ready-made that can who exactly is that play? Is it Parker Kelly? Parker Kelly just, we're all celebrating the fact that he got something like 18 points. And right now, Mathieu Joseph had twice that many points this past season. So I don't know. I wonder about that in terms of, a $2.95 million for a guy like that seems about right. And to me, if you decide to move him, that's fine. But now you've got to replace him. And I kind of think that you're going to be in that window once again financially from a salary perspective. It just feels like it could end up being a wash if you try and replace him in free agency or whatever. Who would you say would be someone in the organization that might be able to slide in and become Mathieu Joseph?
Is that where an Ostapchuk ends up? Like it's Ridley Gregg, it's Shane Pinto, it's an Ostapchuk, maybe it's a Kastelik. You mentioned Parker Kelly, maybe it's a Parker Kelly, but I think they could probably, or they're hoping to find somebody to fill that role, like we've talked about along, the 200-foot wily veteran presence, the pro's pro. That's the kind of guy they're looking for. And Matthew Joseph is one person they'd be willing to move. I think most of the other pieces either aren't good enough to get what you need back, or they don't want to give up. Like, you don't want to give up Ridley Gregg to get that guy. You don't want to give up Shane Pinto to get that guy. This makes sense that Joseph's a guy you would be willing to move. So to me, it makes perfect sense that it's what you want to get is going to cost you something, and it's Matthew Joseph's probably the right guy.
I hear what you're saying. I like his speed, though, and there's not a lot of guys on the team that have his speed. I think probably Steve Staios, if he's honest, probably wasn't in love with the second half of the season for Matthew Joseph, because his stats were pretty good in the first half. And as a whole, yeah, he had a career high in terms of points, but he had no points in the last 12 games. He had 6 points in the last 27 games. And there's something telling in that. Like, you're playing out the string at this stage. The pro's pro, keeps his head down, keeps grinding, keeps working. And at least numerically, production-wise, stats-wise, that might suggest that, Joseph, I don't want to say mailed it in. He never looked like he was ever mailing it in. But it sort of hints in that direction. And the other factor is that as much as he creates opportunities for himself, man, does he miss a lot of opportunities. So I'm just kind of trying to justify as well where Steve Staios' head may be at as well.
Yeah, I think you're dancing all around it, but I'll put this question to you. If you know what you're looking for, you know what it is, the type of player that you want to find, right? Mm-hmm. So what are you willing to give up, though? What do you have that is of value to others that can bring you what you want that you're actually willing to give up? And I don't think there is much else. There really isn't much else.
Yeah, that's fair. I think if you're going to do something with the core of this team, I think it's got to be someone bigger than Matthew Joseph. But your point's well taken. And we'll see what happens between now and the NHL draft. I knew that might be a possibility, but the draft is now, I think we're less than 3 weeks away now. So it's just sort of weird to think that suddenly Matthew Joseph is on the block here.
But the other thing is that it's not necessarily that Matthew Joseph is going to bring you back the player you want. Matthew Joseph may bring you an asset you can use to get the player you want. Like, right. maybe they've got something on the table with somebody out there, and that team wants a second, and Ottawa doesn't want to give up one of their seconds, so they got to go out and acquire another one. Or maybe it's a second and a third, or maybe it's a third and I don't know, the fifth best prospect or something. So that you can trade Matthew Joseph now to get you an asset that can be used to acquire you something else later.
All right, still on the trade front, and this is the best time of year as far as trade rumors and such. Well, except for the trade deadline, I guess that one's pretty good too. But this is these are the the quiet times for Ottawa Senators fans as we're about to get ready though for the Stanley Cup final. The season isn't over yet, but obviously there's going to be lots of talk and lots of dialogue leading up to the draft. And one that came across your desk this week. I'm not saying this disrespectfully or respectfully. It's just, I guess I'm speaking out of ignorance to some degree. I've heard the name David Pagnotta from the fourth period. I don't know the caliber of the reporter per se, but he put it out there. And I can't say I've never heard his name. I've heard his name. But he put it out there this week that the Senators are one of 4 teams that have expressed interest in Anaheim Ducks forward Trevor Zegras. I like that player. I'll throw it to you first, though. What do you think of the idea?
We've talked about this many times. They have too much of the same type of player, correct? And I go back to your other favorite point. If the guy's really that good, why are they willing to give him up? Like, there have been problems there, both attitude-wise, adjusting to NHL play, 200-foot game, defensive game. There's lots of issues with Trevor Zegras' game. There are no issues with Trevor Zegras' offensive skills, imagination, creativity, all that stuff. I just don't think he's what's required. He's not what's needed. And if you're going to move a Chychrun or a Shabbat, whatever it is, I'm pretty much guaranteed now that it's going to be Chychrun. If you're going to move Chychrun, should it be Chychrun in a package for Zegras? I don't think that Zegras is the answer to anything here at this point. I don't think so. Even though I'm on record as saying they need a goal scorer, they need a finisher, I don't think Trevor Zegras is the answer.
he's seen as the, maybe the best we've ever seen. Connor McDavid included as the best trick shot artist, the Michigans and, the wild plays that he's pulled off at the NHL All-Star Challenge. So he's certainly an exciting player. While he's being marketed like a superstar, I certainly don't think he is one. He's a guy who's got 2 seasons where he's been north of 60 points, injury prone last year. I think he only played about 30 games, but he's making just over $5 million. He has 2 years left on his contract. And I'm not going to be grumpy like John Tortorella and saying it's not good for the game, the things that he does, because I think he does a lot of things other than the trick plays and sublime puck skills. But I do think, you sort of laid it out there already, in that I do think it's another case of they have plenty of what Trevor Zegras has to offer. Now, if Anaheim is willing to take back some of that surplus soft skill that Ottawa has, and then, you're still not far, you still haven't addressed the roster imbalances that you have, but I think you're a better team if you say convince Pat Verbeek to take on Josh Norris. Now you've gone like for like, and maybe something like that works, but I just don't see Anaheim doing anything remotely like that, because I honestly think Pat Verbeek is in the same situation as Steve Staios. He's also looking to rebalance his roster. That's the only reason a guy like Trevor Zegras at age 23 would be available, in that Pat Verbeek feels like he's already got enough of that soft skill at the moment. And by the way, Verbeek was kind of the Brad Marchand of his day in the 80s and 90s. Fantastic hockey player, really hard-nosed. He's probably averse to the soft skill player to start with. So I think he's not looking to take on soft skill, which is the only way this could make sense, is if the Sens could get rid of some of theirs to bring in a guy like Trevor Zegras. But this just in, I don't think that Josh Norris, for example, is a tradable asset.
And Josh Norris is just, how are you going to say this? Josh Norris is Trevor Zegras a couple years older, or a year older. Right. He's not fixing his problem. Maybe they're looking to take on some salary because they're going to be low. Maybe they're going to turn Arizona here, scorched earth out there, and trade away things and start from scratch. So they need some salary. In which case, hey, yeah, you can have Josh Norris's $8 million. I would gladly do Josh Norris 1-for-1 for Trevor Zegras. You'd probably have to throw something else in, but if you could get that 1-for-1, sure, do it all day. But I just Trevor Zegras and not seeing anything else coming or what else happens down the road, I don't think that that's the right issue to be addressing right now.
If you're wondering about his contract, he is yet another American. If the Sens did something with him and brought him in, he would be the third American player with 2 years left on his contract that they brought in. You had DeBrincat 2 years ago. You had Chychrun last year. And the difference here is that after the 2 years, Zegras is still an RFA with arbitration rights. So he is technically at least 3 more years under club control. So that's a little different, but I like the player. It just has to make sense for the Ottawa Senators. And I can't see a scenario. I can't see a sensible, reasonable route where it would make sense, to be honest. So there is a couple of trade rumors in the books. I am so done with old school Christmas lights. The tangling, the burning out, the minus 30-degree installation dangling from a ladder. Goodbye Christmas lights. Hello Celebrite, your permanent holiday lighting solution. I've got them on my home right now. When it's daylight, they're absolutely invisible. But at nighttime, things come to life. Right now, with the beautiful weather, we're looking forward to Canada Day. And of course, the classic colors of Christmas. You can really make the lights dance, all controlled from your smartphone. And on those nights when there is no occasion or holiday, you can roll with just a beautiful, subtle white light. And the installation team from Celebrite Ottawa was fantastic. So you can keep on rolling with old school Christmas lights, or you can contact them today at celebrite.ca. Yay!
This is Ryan. Ryan would love to start his own podcast as a fun way to create content for all his platforms, to better connect with his customers and build a new audience. But Ryan isn't great with technology, and he has a lot of questions. What's the easiest way to record a high-quality podcast? Does he need to travel to a studio? What equipment will he need? How does he get his podcast online? What if he has an out-of-town guest? Capital Podcast had all of Ryan's answers. After a free consultation, we took care of everything for him. All Ryan had to worry about was jumping on the mic and starring in his own show. He's recording this week's episode right from his office. His expert guest this week is one of his customers who's in a Chicago hotel room. And Capital Podcast is online with them, making sure the final product is perfect. Easy, convenient, professional. Contact us today and star in your own show with capitalpodcast.ca.
Now, since we last got together, we should get into this as well. The Sens have officially finalized their coaching staff. We knew back in mid-May, Travis Green is the new head coach. He's got a 4-year deal. But we now know the Green's assistants will be newcomers Nolan Baumgartner and Mike Yeo. That was not a very well-kept secret in either case. But Ben Sexton, Mike King both return. Mike King, by the way, the video coach. And Daniel Alfredson is back. I think that's the one that probably grabbed Sens fans the most, wondering, does Alfie even have aspirations to continue his coaching career? And Greg, the answer is obviously yes.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a surprise, I think, to both of us, or at least it was to me. I don't want to be speaking for you.
I was 50-50.
I thought that the reason that he didn't really want to do a lot of things in the beginning was because family commitments, and liked his time away from the rink and the things he was able to do, and his pickleball. I know he talked about pickleball a lot as a reason why he didn't want to be more involved. I was surprised. I really thought it was a one and done. Come in and help Jacques, sort of be there as a buffer, and as someone who's played for Jacques, help with the messaging to the players. When Jacques came in last year, I really didn't think he would come back. I just think it puts him in a tough spot, Steve, right? If especially if he's the heir apparent, does he want to be the head coach someday? Could you imagine what that might be like if the Senators find themselves in a position of having to fire Daniel Alfredson, head coach? Like, my goodness. Or even worse, what if the team doesn't do well? Well, Alfie's the head coach and the fans are booing. Could you imagine what it would be like? I just think it's too close to the firing line. And I worry about the legacy of Daniel Alfredson. I just hope that if anything goes south, they get him off that bench and back into some other type of role before it gets to the point where they have to consider firing him.
I believe that's what will happen. I think I've mentioned this before. Like, Kevin Lowe has held about 9 different positions, it seems, with the Edmonton Oilers. Even after they've decided, okay, you've run your course in this position, they bump him upstairs and he stays in the organization. So I think the same sort of thing would happen with Daniel Alfredson. But again, it's up to him. If they decide that this coaching staff isn't working out and Alfie has to go, it's his end. It's up to Alfie at that stage. If maybe he wants to stay in town and get bumped up, or maybe he wants to continue his coaching career elsewhere. But it will be interesting to see how he fits in, given that it's an odd kind of a dynamic in that, from a playing perspective, and everybody that's on that roster, Travis Green, Mike Yeo, Nolan Baumgartner, they all had, and they're all about the same age, they all had pro playing careers that pale horribly in comparison to Hall of Famer Daniel Alfredson. But from a coaching perspective, those 3 have it all over Alfie, who's now about to enter his very first full season as a full-time guy, not just sort of a Band-Aid temp like he was last year. So it will be kind of interesting to see how he fits in. I believe he'll have the full respect of the other guys, but how much will he feel confident in chiming in?
Yeah, and I don't know what his role is going to be, right? Like, we've already had Mike Yeo confirm that he's got the power play and the forwards, right? So I'm not sure exactly what Alfie's role is going to be. Remember last year when he first went back to the ice, he was just kind of helping out at practices, only practices at home. Because remember, he did actually join the staff before DJ was let go. And he was just kind of helping out at practice, on the ice, at home, wasn't traveling with the team. And that kind of grew from there when Jacques came in. So maybe he's going back to that type of role, more of a one-on-one coach, more of a consultant assistant coach, as opposed to a full bore on the bench every night guy. I mean, who knows? We'll have to wait and see how the bench staff works out when the season starts.
Yeah, it sounds like Ben Sexton will return to being kind of eye in the sky coach.
Yeah,
in actual games. I've not heard anything official one way or the other if Alfie continues to be on the bench. I think he will be, largely because I think that will be his greatest asset. I think he's going to continue doing a lot of the things. And you mentioned before he became an official assistant coach, he was out there one-on-one at practice, talking to the guys. I think that he will effectively be a guy that's all about individual tactics. He'll be talking to them off the ice, on the bench about those sorts of things. Saw it a little bit there. I mean, I think the most notable moment for Alfredsson as the coach last year was when Mark Kastelik swooped instead of finishing his check, and Alfie's right on him. Individual tactics like that in the course of a game is going to be invaluable. I mean, it's Hall of Fame advice. And so I think that's a real asset to Travis Green's team. But I would wonder as well, like, if Travis Green is honest, is he taking Daniel Alfredsson with his one temp season as an assistant coach on, or is it the kind of thing you do because you know how unpopular it would be to say, yeah, no, I didn't want that guy on the staff right now. I would wonder if that was an honest or somewhat token hiring. Does that sound disrespectful?
Yeah, actually, I'll go you one further. I would like to think that management, ownership, Steve Stais, whoever, took it completely out of Travis Green's hands and just said, look, Alfie stays or Alfie goes, depending on how Alfie feels. You have, if Alfie wants to be an assistant coach, he's an assistant coach. If Alfie wants to leave, he leaves. It's totally up to Alfie, and take that decision right out of Travis Green's hands so he doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And there's you go back to the origins of the Battle of Ontario story. Travis Green was a heel in that story. And, I honestly don't, only Travis Green knows that for sure. But there's respect there, I'm sure, for the player, but who knows? I don't know. I have no idea. But I think if you just look at the resumes, you'd say, okay, well, I don't know if that's the guy for my staff or not, but I'm glad it worked out this way. As an Ottawa guy, well, Alfredsson was my favorite player. I'm glad that he's still in the organization. And he may have been hired. Maybe Green was forced to, but I don't look at it as a token hire. I think he's going to be good in the role. And so there's your coaching staff. But I was a little surprised with Mike Yeo getting the opportunity to be the power play coach, given that he's been a PK guru, like as early as this season. Like, this past season with Vancouver, he was getting a lot of the credit for turning around that Vancouver PK, which had been pretty miserable in recent seasons. And this just in, you don't have a season like Vancouver had with a struggling PK. So were you surprised that the Sens didn't kind of keep the train rolling, keep the good times rolling, and keep him around in a PK setting rather than the power play?
My first thought was Mike Yeo kind of maybe made it known that this is what he wanted to do, and maybe it was a deal breaker. I ran a PK and I've done okay with the PK, but at my best, I like working with the power play. That's what I want to do. I'm going to work with the forwards. I want to work the power play because Mike Yeo was in discussions to join the Leafs staff. There's any number of other spots out there available in the NHL. He's a former NHL head coach. I'm sure he'd have no trouble finding a job somewhere else. He did admit that he was intrigued and excited about working with this group in Ottawa, the young guys, and the trajectory this team is on and where he thinks they can get to. But I wouldn't surprise me if he said, I want to do the power play. Like, if you went into a coaching interview with the Ottawa Senators, you would be talking to them about special teams. They'd ask you, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it would be pretty easy to give 5 or 10 minute answer on what plagued the Ottawa Senator PK and what plagued the Ottawa Senator power play. And maybe his answer for what helps the power play impressed them enough that Travis Green said, you know what, let's let him do the power play.
And it could also have been a job that's taken already by Nolan Baumgartner, for all we know. I think Baumgartner is looking after the defense. And if I was to guess as to who his first call was, Travis Green's, it would be to Baumgartner. As we've mentioned again and again, he has been riding shotgun, Baumgartner has, with Green for, I think, 8 seasons and change in Utica and Vancouver. So I think if there's one guy that maybe he reached out to first, it would have been Baumgartner. So it's possible that the die had already been cast as far as PK goes. Don't know what's happening with the PK or who's handling it, but now that we know Yo's got the power play, it's possible that Baumgartner's handling the other. I thought Yo got off a good line about, and this was on TSN 1200, JR asks him something along the lines of, with all these really skilled forwards you're going to be working with, What's that say to you? And he says, it says to me, that's why I took the job.
Yeah.
If I've got Mike Yeo coming off the half wall, maybe I say no thanks to this job. And so it was, it's clear the guy's got a good sense of humor, but there's no doubt that played into it. But the bigger thing is, and when I first heard about the Yeo parting of the ways, I didn't go deep into it on social media. I just thought that he parted company with Vancouver. So I was like, wow, the Canucks decided to fire this guy. But in fact, it was his idea. They offered him an extension in Vancouver. They liked his work that much, but he wanted, for family reasons, to come back. He's from Northern Ontario. His kids were in the States, and Vancouver, he found that was a bit of a travel nightmare. So he wanted to come back closer to the East. And because he was so respected in Vancouver, that's how the dots all connected with Travis Green, who has lots of connections still in Vancouver. And that's why he's the Ottawa Senators assistant coach today.
Perfect. I like the staff.
Yeah,
I do too. Tomorrow.
Let us go. Let's get going tomorrow. I love that. Sure, why not? Finally today, in Sens Rewind, looking back at a crazy radio contest. If you're new to the show and you have no idea of my background or Greg's background, I was at TSN 1200 for 19 years as the morning show host. And we were a different kind of a sports radio show. Sure, we talk sports, lots of Ottawa sports, lots of Ottawa Senators, but it got off the rails quite a bit. And we do the standard morning zoo, wacky radio contests. And we decided to come up with this notion of who is the ultimate Sens fan in Ottawa. And we gave the listeners a whole list of different things that could prove that they're the ultimate Sens fan. And they could go off that board as well. One of the items on there to prove you're the ultimate Sens fan, and it's like $50,000 worth of prizes, including season tickets, road games, playoff tickets, all kinds of paraphernalia, like $50K. And so one of the items that was on the list to prove that you're a big Sens fan was name your newborn after one of the Ottawa Senators. Name your, it didn't have to be a newborn. In this case, it was. Gary Laverdure reached out to me this week, some 20 years after that contest went down. He ended up winning it, and it all came back to me. His newborn daughter, Kelly, he gave her the middle name of Zdeno. Like, he could have gone after...
He could have gone any number of names,
yeah,
but no, it's Zdeno.
Yeah, I was looking at the list. I'm like, if I had to choose, like maybe Jody Hull for my newborn daughter, go with Jody, Zdeno. Anyway, he was all in, I guess one of his favorite players. And so they won the contest, and little Zdeno grew up and this past week graduated from the University of Ottawa. Gary sent along the grad photo of her walking across the stage with a big giant screen in it. And it wasn't even wide enough to handle her full name of Kelly Elizabeth Laurie Zdeno Laverdure as she went up there, standing tall, name in lights like the big dude that she was named after. And I thought that was a pretty cool,
awesome,
full circle moment after the radio contest of 20 years ago.
Awesome. And there was somebody famous in her class too, graduated this week from Ottawa U too.
Yeah, it wasn't directly in her class.
Yes.
But yes, no, it was so that was the Faculty of Health Sciences, I believe is what they refer to it as. And they brought in Daniel Alfredson and gave him an honorary degree. And I think he said some words, and there was, Kelly got a chance to get her photo with Daniel Alfredson. So that was kind of a neat moment. So a big week for Daniel Alfredson, all in all. Decides he's suddenly a doctor. And on top of that, he's now embarking on a full-time NHL career. So, hey, one last time, praise Alfie. I still need the sound effect to go with that, I think, when you get down to it.
Drop it in after post-editing.
You do it. I don't want to. It's assumed. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you being here today once again on the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast. Don't forget there are ways you can connect with us anytime. Sens Nation podcast at outlook.com is our email address. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, what's the schedule going on? And what's the name of this tournament you got going?
This is a Challenger Series where we played. We were in Chicago last month. We're here in New York this month, and we're going to Oshawa next month. Just 4 games on a weekend with Lebanon, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. So we're just playing a series of friendlies.
Gotcha. And are you done? Is there one more still?
Well, I got one more tomorrow against Jamaica again, and then we're out of here. But I've lost a couple bodies. We're down 3 bodies tomorrow. Basically, the fourth line is now the third line. It might be difficult tomorrow morning, but we'll give it a shot.
No, I'd jump in the car right now if I had any Lebanese blood in me at all, but I do not. So good luck to you against Jamaica, and we shall talk to you in our next episode.
For sure. Thanks, buddy.